All right, it is 4:05. That means, ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to have the Utah State University athletic director with us. But before we introduce him appropriately,
I'm listening.
There's only one way we can do this.
Got it.
Yes. Yes. It is
It's a
Meatloaf's
classic.
number one fan. This music video.
Ajay, I am so glad to see, that you, over the past few months, you've gotten some culture to you and enjoying the Meatloaf fan club.
This music video, Mr. Hartwell, John, I'm sorry, but how did you like this music video? It's creepy.
See, Ajay, I am going to tell a little bit about my age here, but I'm pre-music video. That was mid-'80s, early to mid-'80s, the onset of MTV, and I was 13, 14, 15 years old during that time, so I knew Meatloaf long before music videos came available. It is a little creepy, but the music's really, really good.
It's a classic.
There will never, ever be a bigger fan of Meatloaf than this man. He is the Director of Athletics for Utah State University. Ladies and gentlemen, John Hartwell joins us here on the Full Court Press. John, good afternoon. How in the world are you?
Ajay, I'm doing great. I appreciate the intro there. I was looking down today's starting lineup, and I almost hate to go with the baseball analogy because, obviously Major League Baseball is a little bit, the start at least is a little bit up in the air now. But, I look down the lineup you've got between now and the close of the show. I'm just hoping to coax a walk or to, beat out an infield single maybe, but people who've seen my speed before know that's highly unlikely.
Hey,
I better go
lean into one.
For the walk, and then you got Sam Merrill up next. I hope he can hit a gapper, to right center or left center field, so I can make that first to third run without pulling a hamstring. And then you've got Nate Dixon, aka Uncle Buck, coming in to back cleanup today to talk about the Aggies taking on Colorado State tomorrow night. So I'm just privileged to be able to bat lead off today.
Well, John, we all know, according to the Utah State women's basketball Twitter account, no one can shoot a corner three better than you. So, I'm not going to tell you how many takes it took to make that shot. So we'll just leave that one alone. Hey, John, you guys had a chance with the football team to go visit the Spencer Cox, the governor of the state of Utah, to celebrate the Utah State Aggies football season, which ended in a bowl win. Can you tell us about that visit and how cool was that to go see the governor and honor the Aggies?
Yeah, it really was, and it was really neat. The governor's wife, I guess the politically correct term there would be the First Lady of Utah, Abby, worked with Neil Abercrombie, who used to be on our staff here as VP of Governmental Affairs and departed for greener pastures about 6 weeks ago to become the right-hand person to the governor. And it was a total surprise to Governor Cox, so it was pretty neat for him to walk into that room and had all of our players and Coach Anderson and a couple of our staff members there, and he was totally blown away because that's not what it showed on his calendar. It had no hint of the Aggies coming to town, so he loved it, and it was a great opportunity for our student athletes to be recognized, to get some well-deserved recognition. We got to go to down on the floor of the house and be recognized there. Representative Dan Johnson from here in Cache Valley, recognized us, and then Chris Wilson too. Senator Wilson from here in the Valley also got to spend a little bit of time with us. So it was really
awesome.
A neat opportunity for the young men in our program.
John Hartwell, AD of Utah State. Mr. Hartwell, speaking of football, obviously a home run hire with Coach Anderson. Without giving away the secret sauce, what is the process like for you hiring coaches? Because you've hit on some real good ones recently.
No, well, I appreciate that. And, I obviously there are a lot of people out there that are really good football coaches. But I think, here at Utah State, we've got to have coaches who are really good developers of talent. I think we've talked about that before. We're not just going to have a plethora of five-star student athletes, regardless of the sport, lined up to come here. We may get one every once in a while and love that, but the ability to evaluate talent, to look at student athletes who, as high school juniors or seniors have the ability to grow into really good players is really important. And then I think, the fit here in Cache Valley is really important too. I come from kind of a roll up your sleeves, go to work mentality. Don't ask anybody who works for you to do anything you're not going to do yourself. Don't be above doing anything. And I think that type of work ethic and mentality is really important and is a vital component of our coaches being able to be successful here. And ultimately, too, and our coaches do a really good job of this as well, people of high character. I mean, I want us to have people, that we don't have to worry about, reading about them in a negative light in the newspaper. And, I think hiring people with high levels of character and, in turn, them recruiting student athletes with high levels of character is really, really important.
John, I do want to ask you, and I do this respectfully, too, because I know the effort that you and your department put into doing your best to keep coaches at Utah State University. And we also understand that as, these coaches have great success, there's going to be other universities with really deep pockets that are going to come chasing after these coaches. So my question is if you know that a university with a deep pocket could come chase after Coach Anderson at some point, do you already have in kind of a future look ahead of other coaches that you would like to see be at Utah State as the head coach, or is that just a point where we'll cross that bridge when we get there?
No, I think you've always got to be cognizant of the landscape around you throughout the country and potential candidates, regardless of the sport. And, I would love for us to have Coach Anderson stay here, 15 years and retire here in Cache Valley. Is that going to happen? None of us have a crystal ball, but I think I would be negligent as an athletic director if I didn't have, a group of people out there who, I think have the characteristics that we've talked about, high character, kind of a blue-collar mentality, roll up your sleeves, go to work, a aggressive recruiter and a developer of talent. That's always part of the job to keep a list, as to what if, for whatever reason, we potentially had a coaching vacancy.
Athletic Director of Utah State, John Hartwell. Hey, Mr. Hartwell, speaking of football, so of course the football schedule for next year has been released not that long ago. And in this day and age where home and homes have become so important, what was it like scheduling for the program like Utah State to get that schedule and future schedules put together? Yeah,
it continues to be a challenge, and maybe even more so a challenge when you're very competitive or very good. And we've had that challenge here in men's basketball the past few years and have it in football now. But you've got to, and our philosophy from a scheduling standpoint, we always want to have 6 home games. Clearly it's dictated by our Mountain West Conference membership. You're going to have 4 home Mountain West games and 4 away games. So the formula, it really boils down to those other 4 games. We always want to play an FCS opponent if possible. We've got Weber State coming in here week 3 this next year. We will normally play a guarantee game where we go on the road, and obviously that FCS game, we are paying an opponent to come in here for that. We're not doing home and homes with FCS opponents. And likewise, we'll go out there and secure one guarantee game, which our trip Labor Day weekend, which for us is week 2 of the schedule to Tuscaloosa is that game for us. And then the UConn and BYU games, UConn will come to us in week 0, August 27th, and we'll return that trip to Storrs, Connecticut the following year. And then obviously the BYU game. And, we're still working with BYU. It's no secret they're going to, the Big 12. They'll go to 9 conference games. So, we're still I'm still working back and forth with Tom Holmoe on what the future of our series with BYU looks like.
And then I know I've asked you last time you were on our show, but I wanted to reconvene on this question. But with Utah men's basketball, of course, the relationship with Craig Smith is still a positive one. Is there any still hope that you guys can be able to schedule even a home and home with the Utah Utes?
Yeah, we'll continue to pursue that. I think if it was strictly up to Craig and I, we could get it done tomorrow. I'll leave that at that. We'll continue to pursue that as well as pursue them home and football. And people say, well, gosh, why wouldn't you just go down there and play a guarantee game? It's not about ultimately the financial component of that. We just don't feel like if we can get home and home series with Washington State or some other Pac-12 schools, and we're working on that, or get Oregon to come here, who is coming here later in the in the decade, why would we just go down to Salt Lake City to play a guarantee game? That's not the way I want us to operate.
I love hearing you stand up for Utah State University. I love that.
Yeah, actually, if I could follow up on that, how important is it for you to have those games? Ajay and I talked about this in a different broadcast about how we love seeing Utah State play a bunch of the smaller Utah schools in basketball. And, in football, I know it's a little bit different with the conferences, but you talking about trying to maintain that work with BYU as they join a power conference, how important is it to you to have those, you get to have Weber State up here, you play BYU, you're trying to get something worked out with Utah?
Yeah, I mean, it's not life or death, certainly, but I think it's good for football in our state, and certainly the fan bases for us to do that. And you guys recall, early in my tenure, and certainly prior to me being here on the FCS rotation, it pretty much used to be Idaho State, Weber, and Southern Utah, and just rotated those 3 around. Well, some other schools came in and were offering and continue to offer, larger guarantees to those schools, and I certainly understand, their desire to, because we're all trying to balance our budgets, no matter what that number is, and I understand them doing that. But all things being equal, it would be great to do that. In fact, I had a conversation yesterday, a phone call from Debbie Corum, my counterpart down at Southern Utah, and we're looking for, some future games with them as well.
USU AD John Hartwell. And on that subject, so expansion, obviously the topic of conversation in football. As much as you can, what was that like being the athletic director of Utah State, and maybe some of the conversations you had in the Mountain West is they seem to be more rumors than anything, but obviously the expansion was out there. Boise State, San Diego State came up. What was that like being obviously one of the ADs for the Mountain West?
Yeah, it's interesting, and most of those meetings, or all of them, I guess, in that 3 or 4 month period where it was a very front burner topic, it's a little hard to read body language via Zoom, and I really like in-person. I'll be glad when we get totally back to in-person meetings. But knowing that, you may have had a counterpart or 2 or 3 or 4 in that room really speaking out of both sides of their mouth. And I think, there were 5 or 6 of us in the room, and I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus here, but there were 5 or 6 of us in the room that were very emphatic about, pounding our fist on the desk saying, hey, we've got a really good thing going here in the Mountain West. Football is in great shape. Men's basketball, and clearly that's played out this year, is in great shape. A lot of our Olympic sports are in places, and with the with the weakening, if you will, of the Atlantic or the American Athletic Conference with Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF departing, the opportunity is there if we stick together for the Mountain West to be the preeminent, group of five conference, or, and we've had very frank discussions amongst our athletic directors, and the presidents have been involved with the conference office folks about, hey, we need to pound our chest a little bit more with our success. I know a lot of people were turned off by whether it was Mike Oresco, the American Athletic Conference commissioner, referring to them as Power Six, or, Danny White, the self-proclaimed national title for UCF a few years ago. But you know what? There's relevance to those things. If you say that enough, and yes, some people may say it's over the top, but perception is sometimes reality. So we put a shoulder to our league and to our fellow members to, hey, we need to pound our chest a little bit more and talk about the success levels that the Mountain West Conference is having. And I think you'll see a continued effort to do that.
Utah State Aggie Athletic Director John Hartwell joins the Full Court Press here. There was reports, and they're starting to, I guess it came out on social media yesterday, of you guys expanding Maverik Stadium. Can you talk about that expansion and how it's coming about and what your guys' ideas and plans are for that?
Yeah, I'll be happy to address that, and I appreciate you. That's one of those cases where the genie's out of the bottle a little bit. And actually, those plans, and I was not even aware that no one in athletics was aware that those had been put out there publicly. And those are really older plans. The immediate component of that is really more. It's not about additional seating yet. Yes, long term, we have some plans that really are different than what that rendition shows. But the immediate things, and when I say immediate, in all likelihood, starting upon completion of the upcoming season after our last home game, hopefully after the first weekend in December when we host a Mountain West Championship game. But it is really going to be more about that southeast corner where the restroom facility is there, and where that concourse is, or the corridor that gets jammed up. Even with moderate crowds, much less with the sold-out house. But cutting back into the hillside there, totally redoing those restrooms, putting in some new concession areas there. So that's the immediate thing. We do have some other renditions, if you will, on the drawing board, but I think they're a little ways down the line. I mean, we need to fill what we've got. I mean, I absolutely think from a perception standpoint, we need a facility that has over 30,000 seats, from a national perception standpoint. But we've got to do a better job filling up what we've got. And a lot of that's back on us. You've got to balance the whole ticket pricing thing and being totally aware that, a lot of the revenue generation from football for us is from those premium seating areas, the club seats, the suites, the chairbacks on the west side. But we also recognize and need to maintain affordability, because a core of our fan base is the Cache Valley family of 5 or 6 that we don't want to price them out of being able to bring the family to support us, because, again, that's a very vital part of our fan base.
Mr. Hartwell, you already talked about expansion. I was curious, NIL was one of the other big things that hit college sports this year. How did that change the way your department approached athletics this year in terms of management or working with players and stuff like that?
Yeah, we have got some student athletes. We probably got close to 40 now that have what I would call, legitimate NIL deals, and those ranging anywhere from, $500 deals to, $15,000 deals. So it is certainly something that we will continue to try to facilitate for our student athletes through educational components, through software. In fact, we're looking, hope to make a decision next week on a couple of new things to help facilitate those deals for our student athletes. But, our situation is, in conversations with fellow athletic directors around the Mountain West, talking to Tom Berman the other day at Wyoming, he said they only have, 10 to 12 student athletes who have deals now. So it is, something that we want to continue to grow, but it's also kind of a tightrope because, in the current realm or guardrails of NIL, and I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek because the NCAA has kind of gone a hands-off approach. Utah is one of the states that does not have any state legislation. There is hope from all of us, I believe, that there's some federal legislation that's coming down at some point. But with November being an election year, I don't see Congress touching this with a 10-foot pole until after that election. So I think we're probably 18 months at best from having any kind of federal legislation. But the original thing that came out said, hey, you really can't have any institutional involvement. Now, clearly, some places have had institutional involvement, so we're kind of walking a tightrope. We want to help facilitate things, but we can't be when I say we, Utah State Athletics can't be the broker of these deals. But, certainly if we have businesses or donors who have businesses reach out and say, hey, I want to help, I want to get involved, you certainly say, hey, you're welcome to reach out to our student athletes. So it's something that it's here to stay. Is Utah State ever going to be at the point that Texas A&M is, where they get $30 million in the coffers for a 25-person recruiting class? You don't have to be a math major to understand that's $1 million per 18-year-old kid, and some of that's just you shake your head at, or you read the article the other day, which in one way is very encouraging, that international student athletes we're starting to see some potential avenues for them to be involved, because previously, that was an avenue that from a visa standpoint and everything else, we were told, hey, internationals can't really be involved in this. But an article came out the other day where an international Kentucky men's basketball player, has been able to find some ways to do that. And I read in that same article where there's like 5 men's basketball players at Kentucky that have Porsches as part of an NIL deal.
Oh my gosh!
Driving Porsche, and I'm like, that clearly was not the intention when this was developed. But again, we've got to figure out to make sure that we do what we can to help our student athletes have access to these deals. It's probably not going to be anywhere near that level at Utah State, but at the same time, we want to offer all the opportunities that we can to help us from a recruiting standpoint.
Mr. Hartwell, final question. As we celebrate senior night, not only for Utah State men's basketball, but for Utah State gymnastics, as you as an athletic director who developed these wonderful relationships with these student athletes, do you miss them as much as we're going to miss them, like Justin Bean and Brock Miller? Does it kind of get you in the heart a little bit?
Yeah, it does. You develop those relationships, and what is, really satisfying to me is being able to develop those relationships, obviously seeing the personal growth, the maturity of them over the course of their Utah State career, the success that they have, obviously on the various fields of competition, but utmost in the classroom, and them being able to, transform that or to parlay that into a successful career. But being able to maintain some of those relationships, and like I said, you got a heavy hitter coming on deck here in your interviews, in Sam Merrill, and I still talk to Sam on a pretty regular basis. So being able to continue those relationships, but clearly there's a little there's a lot of emotion when you think potentially about the last opportunity for these fine student athletes to compete in the Spectrum or in Maverik Stadium or in the Estes Center. It is a little emotional, but it's also satisfying to see them, the culmination of a lot of hard work and the efforts that they put in, the blood, sweat, and tears equity they put into Aggie athletics and all it's meant to us.
How much would it mean to you to see the USU herd tomorrow out to celebrate not only Brandon Horvath, but Brock Miller and Justin Bean?
Yeah, tomorrow night's a huge opportunity for us. I told my wife last night, I said, I may have to have a nap after the women's game tomorrow to make sure that, I think that start time has already slid due to TV to 8:40, and, I wouldn't bet the house against it sliding another 5 minutes. So probably an 8:45 tip. But, and I know ticket sales have been going really well, but, a culmination of a lot of things. Senior night for these guys, the opportunity for us to get a quad one win over an outstanding Colorado State team that, the story of that game was just like the story of quite a few games we've had this year. We were right there till the very end, just needed to make a play down the stretch. And, I just think, odds are in the favor of the Aggies because we've had so many go down the stretch and just hadn't had a play. And it's not that we hadn't had good plays, good shots, opportunities. We just hadn't made it happen. And I think tomorrow night is that opportunity. And again, what a springboard that would provide us to go to San Jose State a week from today, play our final regular season game, and then on to the Mountain West tournament, which is going to be an absolute. If you didn't have a vested interest in a team, if you were just a basketball junkie, man, I can't think of a better tournament to go to this year than the Mountain West tournament because you've got 8-9 teams that could get hot and make a run and be cutting down the nets 2 weeks from tomorrow in Las Vegas.
We hope Utah State's one of those teams. John, thank you so much for your time. We know we took more than you asked for, but you've been so gracious and so kind with it. We appreciate everything you do for Utah State athletics, and we'll see you tomorrow night.
Guys, I had to wait till I could coax ball 4 to make it to first base. Now I just hope Sam can hit it in the gap so I can get to third base.
Sam will take care of it from there. Thank you, John.
Take care, guys.
All right.